everybody. Joining me today is Will Abeles, who is a Nashville-based comedian by way of New York, known for his hilarious stories, ridiculous antics, and lovely podcasting. What many don't know about Will is that he is also a producer of comedy specials and recently contributed to setting the new Guinness World Record for the longest comedy show. In this part of a two-parter, Will shares his journey in comedy and the importance of pursuing unique talents. He shares his motivation for hosting a podcast and his desire to highlight the talents of others. Get settled in, because Will's story is awesome. Hi, I want to welcome Will Abeles to Jenny's Way, all the way from Nashville. Will is comedian, producer, and a podcaster. I am so happy to bring you to my show. Jenny's Way listener would love to hear you and your story.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I was so excited when I met you, and I'm not sure if any of my listeners are familiar with your story. Can you tell us, how did you get into comedy? It's so exciting to hear that.
Yeah, so I've been doing comedy for a while now, for a long time. I actually started in college. I went to Emerson College in Boston, and Emerson has like a long history of comedians. Like a lot of comedians come out of there, like Jay Leno and Liza Schlesinger and Bill Burr went there, and so a lot of comics. And I just tried it out one day, really liked it, kind of dabbled in it, didn't take it too seriously, but enjoyed doing it. And then then I graduated and I moved to New York, and I did it very seriously for 3 or 4 years.
Are you saying there is
And
such a
then got
thing as being serious about comedy?
well, yeah. I mean, I guess so. In college, we only performed for the other
Ah,
students, and we only did a show once a month. So once I got out, is when I started to try and do it like once a week or a couple times a week. And then when I got to New York, I was doing it all the time. Um, so I guess that's what I mean by taking it serious. Is like still hitting the mics and trying to get booked on more shows and all that kind of
hmm.
stuff.
So, what is it? Once a week, what you feel like is the best for a comedian to kind of keep it exciting and serious?
Uh, well, no, I think you do it as many times as you can. Like I just got back from the road this morning, and I performed one, two, four, eight times over five
Wow,
days.
that's
Um,
awesome. What was the best
yeah, it's
part
a lot.
of doing this? What you just came from? That sounds like a lot of work there.
It was a lot of work. One of the cool things this weekend, the others were all just kind of normal shows, but one of the cool things we did this weekend is I went to Dayton, Ohio, or just outside of it, went to Miamisburg, and we did a show that broke the Guinness Book of Records for the longest comedy show.
Wow.
Yeah, so that one I did 3 spots on. So that's why I had such a high number this weekend. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you love about
Yeah.
comedy? What does excite you about comedy?
I really like the writing. I like like finding a new joke and practicing it and expanding upon it and working on it for as long as you can until it gets to the spot that you want it to. And I also like that even when you think it's done, you always find something else you can change or make better. And I also just really like doing the road. I like going to see different scenes and seeing a bunch of different comedians and all that. Yeah, that's probably my favorite part.
Cool. So, how do you like to write your jokes? Is that from life, or is it made up stuff, or is it a combination of all of the above?
A little bit of a combination, but mostly more about my life. Even if I'm making something up, it's still based in something that might have happened or something I might have said or an event or something like that. But a lot of them, I do a lot of storytelling. So a lot of just based on like my family or jobs I've had or just relationships I've had and stuff like that. Yeah, it all comes from some kind of story that happened to me at some
And you
point.
just fill in details, just make up a little extra.
Yeah, yeah, or exaggerated. I mean, there are some stories I didn't really have to exaggerate much, which are always the funniest to me. But there are some that you have to fill in a little bit and change. Yeah, but the stories about my family and a lot of my stories from New York, I really didn't have to change much. It was always kind of
Hmm.
wild, but there are some you have to add a little pizzazz.
So life in New York was so excited. You had story after story, and you didn't really have to work too hard to write your story. Sounds like.
No, it felt like a lot of the stories were following me because I just had so many different creative jobs and I was around a lot of creative people all the time. So yeah, we just always got into trouble and stories just
Oh,
happened to
you
happen.
trouble? Oh no. What was the most trouble you ever gotten in? Well, you don't have to tell us the worst, but what was the funniest trouble you get yourself into?
Funniest, the worst trouble. I don't know. I guess I didn't get into too much trouble. But we did. I don't really know. We did get stranded. So when I first moved to New York, we got stranded because they shut the subway down and we didn't know how to get
Mm.
home. So we had already used our ticket to get on that one subway, found out it was closed, and we would have had to use another to get on a different one. And people do this all the time, so it's not that crazy. But we had to jump the turnstile and then beat. When the guy saw us jump it before he gave us a ticket, we had to get on the subway before it before it closed. So that was yeah, that was pretty. That was I mean, we would have only gotten a fine and all that, so it wasn't that crazy. But it was it was pretty funny at the time because we were only 23 years old, so we were a little nervous
Mm.
about it.
Okay, well, pushing limits a little bit, thinking up
A little bit.
outside of the box, let's say it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah.
What was the funny story that you perform, and how did your audience were reacting? And you knew that was the best comedy story you ever told.
Probably my best story, or at least one of my most popular ones, which I'm starting to wind down because a lot of comics they will do the same joke for years, and then they release either an album or a special or something like that, and then they tend to retire the joke. So I'm working on retiring this joke, but I probably the funniest story I have is my first day working at a gay sports bar. I worked at a gay sports bar in Chelsea in New York, and my first day there it was RuPaul's Drag Race season finale, and there's just all these drag queens, and like the place was packed. And one of the drag queens saw that I couldn't get to the bar. Like I was a busboy, and they saw that I couldn't hand the glasses to the bar, and because there was this girl in my way, and one of the drag queens yelled out, "Excuse me, miss, get out of that boy's way." But yeah, and then another drag queen was like, honey, that's not a boy, that's a man." And yeah, and it was so ridiculous. And I like remember writing it down as soon as it happened because I was like, I can't even believe this just happened. But I have like a longer version of that story, but that's the short version of it. And that story is always very popular.
Huh.
And yeah.
Yeah, I was wanted to ask that. How long do perform the same joke, and when do you know when to retire that particular joke?
Yeah, I usually don't retire it until one, I either don't connect to it anymore, or until I release it on something. And if it's whether it's a special or an album, or I mean, that's pretty much only two options. But yeah, but sometimes they do ask you to bring jokes back, and when I'm working on new material, I'll pad it with old material like that, so that I know that they'll still get the laughs and everything.
So it sounds to me that's easier to do the older jokes because you know already seen the reaction. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely like because you'll just well the timing of them, mostly like the interaction you're gonna get, the reaction you're gonna get, when they'll pause and listen and all these other things. So yeah, the older material is always easier, but I always have more fun doing newer
Hmm.
material. It's like getting a new toy, kind of, like you love playing with a new toy and you kind of forget about the old toy. And I think because there's more to explore with the new jokes, where a lot of the old jokes they don't change them up that much or anything. They've kind of already been
Hmm.
set.
And new toy, is it more exciting for you to try new jokes? Is that probably what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, 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 and especially if it works too. So then you're excited because you can add it into the set list and everything. So yeah, 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 I do enjoy new jokes. Like last night I did like four jokes that were all written within the last 2 years, and then one joke that was an old joke. And I was like, oh, that's like I like that because it was like, oh, two of these are brand new jokes and they're doing great. So it was
Oh,
fun. Yeah.
cool. Which one was the brand new?
Yeah.
What was that about, the brand new joke?
The brand new joke. I got into a car accident last year, and no one was hurt, nothing like that.
I was
But
about to say that
I
doesn't
took
sound like a funny start, but hey,
no, no. But I totaled my car on the way to the show. I hit a deer, and the joke is about. And then my girlfriend and I broke up. So it's sad. It sounds sad, but the joke is about how I was newly single and I had to ride my bicycle to dates. And yeah, so it's just a joke about that, really. And I keep it light. I make fun of like, I say I totaled the deer. I say I totaled my car. I also totaled the deer, like things like that. And I make fun of the deer a little bit for just being in the way in the first place. I make fun of the car because it was a hybrid, which is supposed to help the environment, and it killed a deer. So just like little light things. So it's taking something that's kind of tragic or dark and finding the humor in it. 'Cause everyone has a car accident or a fender bender or something, and sometimes they can be pretty scary, but sometimes you can get through it and find what's funny about it, and that's what I was
that's
trying to do.
cool. Everybody loses the girlfriend from time to time. Well, not everybody, but you know what I mean.
Not everybody. Yeah, I don't know, just this
Just
guy.
that
Yeah, yeah,
guy. Well, I, would be losing a boyfriend for me before I was married, but you know what I mean. Not a girlfriend.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
thought I'll make a joke
yeah.
out of
Yeah.
it. Have you noticed the difference of audience reaction, whether you, let's say, in New York or Ohio or like North Carolina? Do you see the difference in reaction based on where you perform?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say that when I lived in New York and I would go down to North Carolina, some cities were fine. My material translated and I could make it relatable, but sometimes they just didn't know what I was talking about. So I'll say like when I'm in Ohio or Tennessee or wherever, because I live in Nashville now and I've had different experiences, I can find more relatable humor to those audiences. Um, but yeah, it's funny because like when I was in New York and I was going and do the road, there were certain scene like even like a small town in Pennsylvania would be like I have no idea what you're talking about. So yeah, there's definitely different jokes I have to tell, but some of them are just funny enough that I can just make it an experience and they don't have to feel left out and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff.
So
Yeah.
because based on the experience, but for the new comedian that just now about to start, that would be kind of challenging, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you get in your own little bubbles and you don't think outside of that bubble. So when something doesn't work, you don't understand why, but it's because you're not. Comedy's so much fun because it's subjective. So you can be in an audience, like the biggest club here in Nashville is called Zanies, and we get a lot of tourists, but we get a lot of locals. And there could be nights where you do great because they all like you, and you can do nights where only some of them like you,
Mm,
and that's just because you might not be their type of comic that they
int-
like. And that's not your fault, and that's not their fault either. It's just you have your favorites, and sometimes you're just not one of them.
Interesting. So even in Nashville, which it makes sense, like you were saying, because of the tourists, it could be the people from, I don't know, from small towns and they don't get all of your jokes.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't do anything too political, to be honest. But when I do, that's where it can get a little dicey sometimes because it's just politics is politics, and people have their opinions. But besides that, for the most part, I do pretty well, and I can be fairly relatable to most audiences. I find.
That's a great skills. But you've been doing it also for a long time.
Yeah,
But did you
yeah.
woke up like one day and said, "I want to be a comedian. Let's go for it"? How did that start it?
Uh, so my I had a roommate in college who made me try it. So like I said, Emerson had a really big comedy scene, or had a lot of comics come out of it. So they already had the comedy scene set up within the college. And so somebody was like, just put a flyer up that said, "Do you want to try stand up comedy?" And my roommate was like, "You should try it out." And so I did it. It was tough, but I told one story, and that story went really well. And then I was like, "All right, I'll do it again, and I'll try all stories." And then it went great. So after that, I was like, "Okay, I'll tell stories. That's what I like to do, and that's what I'll keep doing."
Did you write that story yourself? That first story that you told.
That first story I didn't write down at all. It was actually just a story that I've been telling my other friends that they all thought was very
Hmm.
funny. And I was doing jokes that I wrote that weren't doing great at all. And then I just started telling the story, and it just kind of worked out. And people got laughs and all that good stuff.
Would you say if somebody really want to try be a comedian, should they start trying with their friends and see if they get a good laugh out of their jokes?
I don't think that's a bad idea. I always think the best thing to do though is go to an open mic and try it out. but also don't quit after your first try because it's not always going to go the way you want. I know a lot of people that they do try jokes out on their friends, and their friends like, "Oh, go do it," and then it doesn't translate the same way to an audience that doesn't know you. Because that's one of the biggest things of comedy is you only have a couple minutes to establish your personality and like your style and all that, and that's how the audience is going to know if they're going to connect to you or not, or so when you're talking to your friends, they know you very well, so they understand little things you might be adding or leaving out. But regular audience doesn't know you for the most part, unless you're like a very popular comic and they're paying to come see you. But if you're just doing like an open mic, they probably don't know you. So that's why I think it's better to try it out there, and then that's where you learn a
Hmm,
lot more.
that's cool. You think growing
Yeah.
up in your family helped you be creative and also confident, or you acquired those skills as you were going and about your life during your college years?
No, definitely. Yeah, no, my family definitely helped with the creativity side of things and the confidence side of things. I mean, the confidence in comedy, I learned on my own through college and eventually just finding out I was pretty good at it. Um, but the creativity side when I was growing up was very much fostered by my family. They like I would like like I would convince even my teachers would I would convince them like instead of writing a paper to make a movie about it. Like if we like one time we did the Odyssey and I was like I don't want to write a paper about the Odyssey. Can I make a movie? And they were like sure because no one asked to do that. And so I had a lot of good friends that we would create movies together and do all that kind of stuff. And I was in drama club, and my family was always supportive of that. And it was always funny because I was the only, for the most part, as far as I remember, I was the only kid in drama club that also played
Hmm,
sports. So in drama club, I always felt like kind of the outcast sometimes.
interesting.
Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, but not like in a bad way. Like it was just that I would be coming from soccer practice and they weren't. you know.
Huh.
Um, yeah, but no,
Multi-talented, you
my
were able to do the sports and you did drama. That is not common, though.
no, and it's I would probably argue I got a little burned out from it when I was that young, but my family is very funny. Like all my family members are very funny. My brothers my brothers and my sister especially are just hysterical. Like my brother Charlie, he's the oldest. There's closest in age to me. He'll say things that I'm like I could never have written something as funny as what you just said.
Wow.
And then my youngest brother Kevin, I do a lot of jokes about him because he's 12 years younger than me. So the experience is just very different. We didn't grow up in the same household, and I was like in college when he was like 6. So I was just always a guy that came home from college, then a guy that would come home from New York until. So I watched his childhood, and it was just we didn't have a relationship for a long time. But he was always so funny, and I would just take jokes and write about it and conversations we would have and all that kind of
Does
stuff.
your family ever complain, Will, you're writing jokes about us?
My mom complained once, and my dad asked me to not write jokes about my sister. So I don't really joke about my sister much, but she's older now, so now I'm starting to write some jokes. And my mom, I used to tell a lot of jokes about, but then one day she was just like, I just don't love it. So just for respect for her, I only really write about my dad and my brothers for the most
And they're
part.
good with that.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, if the joke's funny enough. There are things you do have to be careful about because just like certain jobs people might have, you just don't want to get them in trouble. But so far,
But
everything's
then
been
if you
good.
change the names, then it should be good. Nobody really knows who you're talking about. Hmm.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
And I'm
true.
sure you have to do it for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I don't normally. I got actually. It's funny because one of the first times I ever did comedy, I used someone's actual
Wow,
name,
really?
and it got me in a lot. Yeah, well, I didn't know. It was only my second time I did it, um, and so I got in a lot of trouble back home, and learned right there, like, oh, you can't just use someone's name unless they say it's okay. But for the most part, yeah, I learned like I just make up names all the time.
Yeah, making up is
Yeah,
probably the best just to make sure. What if they tell you it's okay and then they change their mind? Then what?
I guess I just have to adjust it and hope that I haven't recorded anything yet. Like that's pretty much
I
it.
think
Yeah, because
yeah, that's probably the best, isn't it?
yeah, and it's getting tougher because we have to release content so often now for Instagram and YouTube and everything. And so once something's out there, sure you can take it down, but you don't know how many people have already seen it.
Hmm. How do you feel the virality kind of changed the way of the comedy? What are your thoughts on that?
I got a lot. Well, I mean, in one way, I think it's great in that it exposes comedy to so many different people that might not have been able to see it otherwise, or have just never like gone to a show or ever had an interest to go to a show, um, or don't have the ability to. So in that regard, I like it. I also it can bring to the forefront comedians that have been working really hard, but it can also bring comedians to the forefront that I don't think deserve the spotlight. And I also think because of how much content we constantly have to create, because we're just putting anything out there, audiences are losing the, how do I phrase this? Like the audience is not
Intimacy,
as,
you think? What?
not really, yeah, that a little bit, but more like they're not trained the way they used to be. Like they used to know, don't yell out, don't do this, don't do that, but now they all think they're going to be part of this next viral TikTok or whatever it is. Um, so audiences are getting a little bit rowdier for the most part, and they're not as I guess not as well behaved or like considerate sometimes. But at the same time, if big comedians are going to keep pushing for crowd work and having them put it out, the audience isn't just doing what they think is right. So I don't really blame the audience as much as I blame social media and certain
Mm,
comics that pushing
mm.
it so hard. You know,
I've heard,
yeah,
I couldn't remember, a couple of big comedians had told uh, on live one time, like they're getting bad comments on social media, and one kind of got a little agitated, to say the least. I wish I remember his name. And he went back after that lady, and then it turned
yeah.
into big fiasco. What do you do if somebody, for some reason, didn't like your joke and decide to be plain blank nasty?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the more comments you get, the more views you get because that's just the way the algorithm works for the most part. So before I used to try and just mess with them a little bit, but now I just go, thanks for watching or thanks for commenting. And that's all I say because that's another comment. And if they get madder, they comment again. Um, I had one guy, he was like starting off being kind of mean, and then he was like, hey, sorry, man. Like, I know this is hard. So, like, keep going. I like all your other stuff or something like that. And I was just like, great, so it doesn't bother me as much as it
Used to.
probably used to.
Mm.
Yeah, but for the most part, I just go, thanks for watching, and just
But
leave it at
that's
that.
that's true for not just comedian. Anybody that putting contents out there, I mean, you could be nice. Hey, thanks for your comments, and move on.
Yeah, I mean, but there are also certain comments, like luckily not in my world, but sometimes comments can cross a line, and I do understand like when it's hate speech or there's death threats, that's completely
Sure,
different,
of course.
But when it's just kind of like I don't like your video or
Well,
it's not
don't
funny, you're
watch
like,
it,
oh,
right?
whatever. Yeah, 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 yeah. Or like, thanks for watching, thanks for your opinion, But yeah, so there's some comments you obviously have to address and report and whatever it is. But for the most part, I
But
don't
why
get
do you
anything like
think
that.
people jealous, maybe, or they have nothing better to do in their with their life? Angry?
Probably both of those things, and I think there's also just a lot of hate out there, and people don't know where to put it, so they go online, they direct it because they can do it faceless, and there's no repercussions for the
Mm.
most part, and it's because they're
Mm.
cowards. So I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think one day if anybody ever say anything, it's like, okay, well, you do try it. See, how do you feel?
yeah.
Why don't you try it?
I always think
Have
that.
you ever
Yeah, I
tested
always
that?
find that
Say,
funny.
hey, why don't you try to be a comedian once or twice? See how that feels. Have you ever tried that?
I've never tried that now, but I think a lot of comics do say stuff like that. We're like, all right, you go do it. But it's not really something that's worth focusing on too much. Putting your energy into because you're never gonna meet that person probably, so it doesn't
Okay,
matter.
your listeners, you heard it from Will. Just don't worry about it. Say thanks for watching, and move on
Yeah,
about your day.
yeah, and let them help you get more views by commenting and helping the algorithm. So yeah,
Some say any publicity is good. So hey, at least they commented.
yeah, right, 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 right.
How do you overcome stage fright, or do you never experience that before?
I don't get stage fright now.
That's awesome.
I
What do you attribute that
yeah,
to?
I don't know. Well, I guess because in high school I did drama club, and we had a really big theater, a really big uh well, not theater, but yeah, no, it was a big theater. We had a big theater for my high school, And so, sure, I was nervous freshman, sophomore year when I was first starting, but I also actually, no, I started in middle school. I started doing drama club in middle school. So I learned to be in front of audiences pretty young. And then eventually it becomes kind of second nature. And also, I think I like the attention. I think
Oh,
that's part
who?
of it.
No, you don't like
Um,
attention? I
yeah, yeah,
like attention
yeah, it's
too.
the best. But
So,
yeah,
for your
I
listeners, we
think
both like attention, and that will conclude
yeah.
our part one. So, we will be back with you all momentarily for part two. Keep watching. We shall return. So, that's the end of part one with Will Abeles. Be sure to check out part two.